All right, thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the award-winning Sales Game Changers podcast. I'm excited today. I'm with Julie Murphy from Sage Communications. Today we're doing one of our very well received, Julie, marketing and selling effectiveness podcast. And one of the people know that if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, thank you. Please give us a 5-star review. If you're watching this on YouTube, please go up, give us a thumbs up. We would greatly appreciate that. And Julie, all of our podcasts, all of the marketing and selling effectiveness podcasts are up on our website, salesgamechangerspodcast.com. You can read the complete transcription, listen to previous marketing and selling effectiveness podcasts. And Julie, our guest today, Tony Celeste with Ingram Micro, was on the show before. And he was on the show, it was January 2021. Believe it or not, it was episode 313. And Julie and Tony, we're approaching episode 800. And we've had about 15 million interactions with the show. And it was quite interesting. Go up on salesgamechangerspodcast.com, type in Celeste, Celeste, and you'll see the transcript and you'll be able to listen to the show from 2021 and to this show. Julie Murphy, it's great to see you. What are your
Right.
expectations for this show as we prepare to bring back Tony?
Yeah, well, I'm really excited. Obviously, I was not involved in the first podcast interview of you, Tony, so I'm excited to be involved now. So I've actually known Tony for many years. He's been a sales leader in this space for a long time. I first met him when he was a sales leader at Brocade many years ago, and now he's been at Ingram Micro for 6 years. I think, Tony, you've been someone who's always sort of embraced thought leadership in the different times that I've worked with you. And I think this is going to be a great conversation, not only because you know how to navigate this marketplace, but you really also know all the players in it, and that can get very complicated. So, welcome, Tony. We're excited to have you.
Well, thank you, Fred. Thank you, Julie. It's great to be here with the two of you.
Yeah, we're excited. So for people who don't know Tony, give us a little bit of an overview of Ingram Micro. And again, Julie had alluded to you lead the public sector efforts, you know, B2G, et cetera. Kind of also hit, if you don't mind, on the relationship between primes, prime contractors, systems integrators, distributors, and customers. And where does Ingram Micro fit in that mix?
Sure. So Ingram Micro is one of the world's largest technology distributors and aggregators. I lead the U.S. public sector business, where I serve as the president for Ingram Micro Public Sector. It's the wholly owned subsidiary we created to focus on this market. We did so to provide greater agility for evolving compliance and mission requirements. And we found that this enables us to actually better serve the partners as well as the federal, state, and local government and education markets. So I think what's really interesting about this space is the public sector's complexity, the regulatory, compliance, security, and mission-driven buying that they do. It's really quite unique. So in this ecosystem, you mentioned, spending a little bit of time on the primes, the distributors, customers. You have prime contractors, distributors, and customers who all play distinct and interconnected roles. The prime contractors are most often the direct interface with the government and the end customers. They're really tasked with execution. Distributors like Ingram Micro, we bring scale, breadth, compliance infrastructure. We're the business enablers, ensuring that technology solutions are innovative, available, secure, and most of all, compliant today with regulations, right? We all hear about CMMC, right? The Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification, or NISP, the National Industrial Security Program. So my role is like that of a conductor, orchestrate the value chain, aligning vendor partners, resellers, and the government customers so that missions are accomplished securely and effectively.
That's great. I love that you gave the analogy of a conductor because that role is critical and it's a really complex environment. The other thing to think about is when you have so many different people involved or entities involved, it's really important to provide credibility. Where are you providing value? And so my next question for you is, where do you see thought leadership playing into this and providing value and credibility? And how have you personally, embraced thought leadership throughout your career?
Wow, that's a really interesting question, Julie. Throughout my career, I've always believed that credibility is earned. It's not claimed. You need to be constantly inquisitive and have a growth mindset. It's not about what we know, but what we don't know. And it's the ability to recognize it. So what I've found is what's been most valuable in being successful is doing that, right? Knowing what it is you don't know and then how to go find it out. So in sales and marketing, you build value and credibility through insights,
Mhm.
consistency, and by showing up where the customer is making decisions. And you show up there to do what? To ask questions and listen. And so I try to embrace the mindset of listening, learning, and leading. I've also leaned into thought leadership, and I've done so by participating in panels, writing about procurement shifts, hosting partner webinars. And for example, during times of uncertainty, like continuing resolutions or new executive orders, I've used thought leadership to cut through the noise and provide clarity to our partners and the customers. And we've done so by always focusing on the opportunities that those shifts create. So the role that marketing plays here is that of amplification. It's not just about brand awareness, it's about positioning yourself in your organization as a trusted advisor. And you can't wait to build rapport in person anymore. Right? Think back to the day you used to knock on a door, walk in an office, you could pick somebody's photograph or get a hop. You build rapport. You have to build that rapport today online. And
Mhm.
when partners see you consistently bringing insights, market trends, and actionable advice or intelligence, it deepens the relationship and creates aligned interests. And that's what helps to drive sales.
Yeah, that's a great point. And customers, they can be much more discerning now, where they really, what we found, and we talk about this a lot on the Sales Game Changers podcast, is that customers don't need you if you're not providing real value for their specific challenge. So I like the way that you talked about, creating these insights and then finding ways to amplify them. Give us some, on the ground actions that you've done, like how have you structured your teams or internal processes to ensure that marketing is enabling more effective selling and maybe even vice versa? How are you making that at the ground happen and take place?
Yeah, I think you even touched on it in your question. Fred, it starts with alignment. Too often, sales and marketing run in parallel lanes, you know, and so I've worked to create an integrated approach where marketing provides both air cover and enablement for sales. So they're out there, put it in military terms, softening the beaches. It begins with having a plan. It's aligned around a common mission statement tied to your long-term vision. And then it's all about executing on it. That means marketing builds awareness, demand generation, and thought leadership. Sales, we're bringing back the intelligence from the field and the interactions we have. And then we loop that feedback back into our messaging. So we're always speaking to real world challenges. And this requires a lot more upfront work than ever was involved in sales before. You really have to do your homework. You really have to do your preparation. And marketing plays a big role in it. So on my teams, we hold cross functional planning sessions. sales, marketing, vendor management, all at the same table. We measure success not just by leads, but on pipeline quality, partner engagement, and ultimately the closed wins that we get together. And then when everyone's aligned around shared goals and metrics, the synergy between sales and marketing becomes incredibly powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. You become more part of one team. So it's great to hear that you've been ahead of the curve in even structuring your teams that way. I would love to hear an example, if you have one, of maybe a really big or complex win where marketing was able to directly contribute and help your sales team.
Well, I'll put it in these terms. One strong example was a campaign around the federal busy season. So we knew year-end IT spending was under pressure because of budget constraints and policy changes. So instead of just pushing product or a specific solution, we developed a campaign of webinars and market insights and briefing materials to help the partner understand where the dollars would flow and how to align with agency priorities. We also leveraged our solutions finance team and our external partners to build as a service offerings and financial solutions, spreading the costs over time and allowing partners and customers to execute today with limited funds. So they had, how do you stretch those limited dollars further to get that mission done and accomplished? The awareness we built positioned us as a go-to distributors, let's say, for guidance and not just for transactions. As a result, several large resellers turned to us for support on some complex opportunities, specifically in on the federal side, and then also on the education. That investment content directly led to multi-million-dollar wins in both federal and the education space, using that ability of as a service or to spread the cost to do more with less funds today, but get that solution implemented faster. In prior roles, I'm thinking back, we also built campaigns around open standards, digital transformation, modernization, whatever the sort of the priorities of the day were. And these served all as disruptors to the status quo in IT acquisitions, unseating incumbents and introducing innovative mission enabling technology solutions across the government and across education markets. And so it reinforces the idea that, smart content builds credibility, and that credibility drives sales.
You use the word disruption. And again, we're talking today on the Marketing and Selling Effectiveness podcast with Tony Celeste, the president of Ingram Micro's public sector. Like I mentioned, you were on the show before in the middle of the pandemic, right? And we talked about how you can lead through that, what selling professionals should be doing to, just have the right mindset, et cetera. Well, we're doing today's interview in August of 2025 for people who are listening in the future. Thank you very much. I'm just kind of curious, give us some of your insights on how to be successful in professional sales during times of great change. Again, this year has been nothing but change, right? We talked about this on the Sales Game Changers podcast, Julie, before,
Right.
time of Doge and times of, cutbacks, we're still, the government is rethinking a lot of ways of what not really what its mission is, but how does it go about it achieving its mission. Give us some of your insights. What are some of Tony Celeste's insights on being successful during times of great change?
That's a really interesting question. And I think I will first agree by saying we are in a time of unprecedented change, and maybe haven't experienced so much change at such a rapid pace as we've seen right now. And we are at a technology inflection point with AI, and that relative to information technology is going to completely reinvent the stack. But we are in that period of tremendous change, new administration, new leadership in agencies, new compliance requirements, the AI disruption, supply chain pressures, and change creates uncertainty. But it also creates opportunity for those who can provide clarity. And that's the key. It's a double-edged sword. And so that uncertainty creates opportunity. And we think about uncertainty in terms of opportunity. So that's the number one. It's a mindset shift. So we've seen and navigated administration changes before, shifting priorities and spending challenges and new technologies, but not on the scale that we're seeing right now or at its pace, never all at once. So my vision for dealing with this has been to stay informed, stay engaged, and then over communicate. We can't be communicating enough. To coin a phrase from the Marines, this is a time to improvise, adapt, and overcome. So my approach has been to avoid wait and see, and instead have a bias towards action, leaning into education and enablement instead of marketing as noise and saying the same thing. We've positioned our marketing around guidance. This year, we launched targeted content for partners around AI adoption in the public sector, cybersecurity, supply chain risk management, and procurement reform. That's not just marketing, it's enabling sales conversations. And the vision has been clear. It was to help partners navigate change by being their source of trusted, actionable intelligence. And the success we've seen is not just in sales growth or revenue, but in stronger partnerships, deeper trust, and being invited earlier into the customer decision cycle. So you're there sooner, you're there faster, you have the opportunity to really shape those opportunities, and you're increasing your win probability while you're shortening those sales cycles.
Tony, that's great. I love that you set a bias toward action, and I can tell that you've sort of always led that way. I would say, just based on what you just said, you also have a bias toward optimism. I mean, keep learning, identify where the opportunities are, who can you partner with next, and I think that's terrific. I think that's great, especially in times like now where change is happening very quickly. You have to embrace it. A lot of people freeze, but you've got to embrace it and see how you're going to push forward. So that's terrific. I have a fun question for you, Tony. You had mentioned also a lot of companies are out there saying the same thing. And in addition, I would say there are a lot of marketing sales buzzwords out there that are really overused. I would love to hear which one you'd like to see retired.
Well, it's not any one single word, but I'll give you two phrases, and I use them often myself too. It's hard to avoid them. IT modernization and digital transformation. They've been so overused, they've lost their meaning. I mean, I find myself every time I use them explaining what I mean by them so that people understand the context. Every company claims it. Every solution is tied to it. But customers are fatigued by the terms. They just, okay, what's the difference? What really matters is mission enablement and mission outcomes. Are we helping a federal agency protect against cyber threats? Are we helping a school system modernize learning? Are we enabling first responders with better tools? Those messages really don't get to the heart of the mission. I mean, they sound good. I'd like us to move away from jargon and focus on what truly matters. Outcomes that advance the customer's mission. So that means preventing terrorism and protecting critical infrastructure, improving health outcomes for veterans and citizens, safeguarding our warfighters and first responders who put themselves in harm's way, and delivering better educational outcomes for our children. Those are the missions that will resonate versus saying, hey, we're giving first responders better tools, or we're helping schools modernize, or federal agencies protect against cyber threats.
That's a great answer. And actually, you mentioned in a previous question that Julie had asked about being proactive, right? And one of the main trends that we've seen in professional selling is that, once again, customers don't need you unless you're providing value. But it's not just, I like the way you said that, it's not just IT modernization, more productivity. That doesn't really work anymore. You need to understand specifically, right? Specifically, what is that customer being challenged with today that you can bring solutions to them that they haven't thought about, maybe by combining various technologies together to help them get to a place where they need to get to achieve that mission, right? Improve the healthcare for the veterans, whatever it might be. So that is where the professional sellers that are succeeding today, Tony and Julie, we see they are being proactive. And I like the way you talked about how you need to be working with marketing to figure out ways to get those messages to the right people at the right time so that it will accelerating sales. I liked also the point you brought up about over communicating.
Yeah.
It's like a kind of like a thin line where, you can't keep throwing stuff out there where people aren't going to listen because they keep saying, oh, there's another email about whatever it might be. But, you need to be stay at top of mind and showing them the value. So thanks for all your great insights today. Tony, I just want to remind people you can listen to today's show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Give us a 5-star review, subscribe. We're up on YouTube and Julie Sales Game Changers Podcast.com. I love this show because we're talking about, Julie and Tony, things that professional sales organizations need to be doing to be successful. So, Tony, I'm going to ask you for your final action step. You've given us a lot of great ideas. I want to give you the opportunity to say something specific people can put into play. But, Julie, do you have any thoughts that have emerged? I know you have tons of them, like I have, but anything you want to follow up with before we ask Tony for his final action step?
No, I'm excited to hear a final action step because you've been in this business for so long, Tony, and you've done a great job of sort of escalating yourself at each role that you go to. So I know that you have great career advice. And I'm with Fred. I love the over communication, and the bias for action. I think is really already a great tip.
I will say one thing about over communicating. It's two-way, and if you're doing it properly, you're asking lots of questions, and asking lots of questions, people are always interested in talking. So I think that's a good way to transition into what my advice would be, and it's pretty simple. Invest in learning and invest in relationships, and you do those hand in hand. So how do we learn? By being inquisitive, asking lots of questions. It doesn't mean you don't go in prepared and do your homework, but you have to do that. And that will help you to build long-lasting and meaningful, impactful relationships. On the learning side, keep sharpening your understanding of the market, compliance, the customer's priorities. Customers expect you to know their world as well as you know your own products. More planning, more upfront work is required than ever before. And I think I've reiterated that multiple times to be effective in today's public sector market. On the relationship side, build trust by showing up consistently, adding value, and listening more than you speak. Ask lots of questions. Your credibility as a sales or marketing leader comes not from what you sell, but from the problems you help solve. And if you do those two things, I mean, continuous learning and relationship building, you'll not only advance your career, you'll become an indispensable asset to your customers and to your team.
Yeah, that's great insight. And actually, uh, 30 years ago, what keeps you up at night was a valuable question. Well, it's not anymore. The question now needs to be really focused on, like you were saying, specific things. And there's no excuse for a selling professional, Julie and Tony, who isn't prepared, who doesn't know what the mission is of the customer. You could find that many ways what they're dealing with. I mean, you got to be following the trades and, even just typing into certain AI tools will find that out. So, Julie, any final thoughts before we wrap up here with Tony?
Yeah, Tony, I also love the showing up consistently, which I think is important. Before we would talk about just making sure that you're actively involved in these events, but you noted in the beginning of the podcast how important that online presence is or online engagement and LinkedIn. I would say showing up consistently there is really important too. So that's great advice.
All right. Once again, with Julie Murphy, this is the Marketing and Selling Effectiveness Podcast. My name is Fred Diamond.